Next from Chicago, Governor Rauner holds a press conference to announce Illinois is seeking a new private firm to run the state lottery. This runs about 15 minutes.
Thanks for joining us today. Today's an important day. We have an announcement to make. We are now formally putting out the new request for proposals for a new private manager for the Illinois State Lottery. Very important step in increasing revenue to fund our schools and to fund our key government services. As you are, I think, all well aware, our Illinois lottery has been very poorly run and has failed to meet expectations for years. We inherited a very deeply flawed contract from the current existing manager, and our predecessor's administration did a last-minute attempt at a termination deal that was deeply flawed, that we had to completely restructure. We were able to restructure it, and we saved Illinois taxpayers about $28 million through the restructuring. But we need a new manager for the Illinois lottery. The nature of the contract for the management of the lottery is dictated by the General Assembly. They passed a law requiring a private manager in 2009, so we are going to honor that structure. We're going to look for a private manager, but we want to open it more broadly than to typical gaming companies. There are very few gaming companies that focus on this, and we think also consumer product companies, marketing companies, technology companies should be in the mix, and a broader array of opportunities. We have three significant goals in the new manager, in the new management of the contract. One, we want much greater transparency. We're going to require any of the new manager candidates to honor all our FOIA laws. Our existing prior manager did not honor all the FOIA laws and went around those in various ways. We are going to insist on complete transparency, number one. Number two, we want the elimination of all conflicts of interest. Our existing management structure had some very troubling conflicts, and it's my primary reason that I do not want to deal with them ever again. They had, as suppliers to them, companies that they owned. So they had an arrangement in which they could put out and get supplies from their own business at inflated markups. We want a manager who is not going to be a supplier in any other way. We want a pure management contract, not also combined with a supply contract. We think that is a fundamental flaw in the existing deal, and we will not allow anybody to bid who also wants to be a supplier in any regard. And then thirdly, and very importantly, we want to make sure that we grow our lottery very significantly, and that's going to require two things: innovative use of technology. We want folks who are very sophisticated in online technology and mobile applications. That's where the young people are doing their entertainment and their choice of communication. We also want an organization that has proven its ability to use creative marketing and advertising. We have been woeful in the way we've marketed our lottery system here in Illinois. We will be studying what other states are doing and have done. The state of Michigan is up to 6% in internet sales. We're down at 1%. Over in the UK, they're getting 30% of their gaming revenue through online and digital applications. We can be much more innovative and creative and aggressive in growing the lottery, we believe, if we pick the right partner. This process will unfold starting now. We anticipate it'll take somewhere between 5 to 6 months to get a new manager in. I will say this: if we can't get a satisfying manager, one that really will meet our expectations, then I would anticipate I'd go back to the General Assembly and say this private manager is not. There aren't enough good options for us out there, and we should look at other solutions. Other states have done things like public benefit corporations or other structures that seem to be working. So we, for now, will honor the General Assembly's approach that they've put in place. I hope we can make it work, But if we can't, we're not going to put the taxpayers in a position where we've got failure again. We're going to get this right. It's too important. It's too big a source of revenue for the state. With that, I'll turn it over to the acting director of the Illinois Lottery, Tim McDevitt, to comment further. Tim.
Thank you, Governor. So I just wanted to make a few notes on the process that will take place going forward. So this will be a lengthy procurement process, as the Governor alluded to. We are not only soliciting bids for a new private manager, we're also soliciting bids for key suppliers that will end up working with that new private manager. So during that time, there will be the need to, A, have interested parties respond to this solicitation. B, we're going to need to evaluate those responses. And then after that, we're going to have to still negotiate the contract with whoever the private manager ends up being, should we find a suitable partner. During that time, if we need to, we can extend the contract with the existing private manager. So that can continue to take place. To our vendor partners, to the players that support us, I would say that we do not expect there to be any interruption in service during the transition. We expect a smooth transition. We're actively developing a disentanglement to take care of any sort of interruptions in service that could occur. To echo the Governor's last point, I would say, the bottom line in all of this is that we want to create greater funding for education, greater funding for other causes. Whether that's through a private manager or through another mechanism is up for debate. Both in Illinois and in other states that have attempted the private manager solution, they have not delivered the results that they promised. So ultimately, there may be a need to go back to the General Assembly and ask for greater flexibility to get a process that delivers the results that school children, that our vendor partners, that taxpayers expect during this process. So with that, I think we'll open it up to questions. So the contract is a potential 10-year contract, and in terms of what the value of the contract, I think what you're saying would be to the potential private manager. The amount we put on there was $300 million, but what I would say is, if you think about how this contract is structured, it's structured towards incentives, meaning when the state wins on the bottom line, on profits that are going to go to funding causes, then the manager also wins. The manager does not get that money unless they start to exceed what they call the common school fund obligation to the state. So it's a win-win under the structure. It could be more. If it's more, we're happy because that means the state's getting more.
Governor, could you explain this public benefit corporation, other models or examples?
Tim could talk a little bit about it.
Sure. Two states where it's notable are Georgia and Tennessee. Georgia in particular, if you look at their population and the amount of income that they see from their lottery, it's around $900 million. That's substantially more than Illinois, even though with less population than Illinois. And I would say that's a more flexible structure. That's a structure where you have a corporation that is actually owned by the state and doesn't have to go through a lot of the red tape, a lot of the long procurement processes, other processes that ultimately can make a organization less responsive, right? So something like developing a new game or a new mobile app, things like this that, in the private sector you would want someone that's very responsive. And so a public benefit corporation allows for more of that. I'd have to ask our attorneys on that. I'm not a FOIA attorney.
Yeah, I can certainly answer that question, which is at least under Tennessee and Georgia law, that is the case, and that would certainly be the intent here in Illinois. And we should also note that we've taken extra protection in this contract to ensure that the next private manager fully complies with Illinois' FOIA laws, and that we have a stick as the state to enforce that in the case of non-compliance. Jason Barclay, the Governor's General Counsel.
Governor, can you say that this is an indication that you're willing to look at other revenue sources to enhance those as a way of building the state's revenues? Here going back to the lottery, perhaps other sources besides tax revenue?
Well, I'll say a couple things. First, the lottery is its own very important revenue source, and it needs to be run right. It hasn't been at all. It's been woefully inadequate. And the structure of the contract and the management of the contract has been very poor. So we need to get this right. It's a big number. we are looking at every way possible to protect our taxpayers and create more funding sources for the initiatives that we have. So whether it's our proposal in the General Assembly to create a foundation for our state fair so that we can have private corporations that are in agriculture and agribusiness donate millions of dollars to our fair so we can run it more profitably and with more taxpayer protection. That's something we've got in front of the General Assembly right now. Hasn't been voted on yet, but it would be a win for the taxpayers, no downside. As we've announced in the past, we've recommended that we form public-private partnerships to fund expansion of our highway network. We can do that with 100% private money. We can create hundreds of millions or maybe billions of dollars from the private sector to build out new roads and then variably toll those so that the investors can get a return on their money. It's all incremental growth, saving taxpayers significant cost, and that's another way that we're looking. We are also privatizing pieces of the Department of Commerce so that we can partner with business to bring in the most talented people in America for recruiting and negotiating with businesses to bring their jobs and their investment here to Illinois. Some other states have done this to very great success, and we have already raised millions of dollars in pledges of donations from businesses that the taxpayers here do not have to pay, that we can have funded through a private not-for-profit corporation that partners with our Department of Commerce to bring more businesses and more jobs to the state. So these are some, and we have many efforts like this to protect taxpayers, bring in more revenue sources that the taxpayers do not have to fund to grow our economy and get more value.
What about casinos? Private casinos, have you heard about that in the last?
I haven't heard much about it lately either. It'll probably come up as part of a grand bargain discussion, I would guess, post-election. I don't know that. I've not heard that lately. But again, my own view, I'm not a fan of gaming myself. I think it can be, it has negatives. That said, I'm a believer in local control. A lot of people like to gamble. It's here. Chicago has a casino. It's in Gary. And Indiana gets the benefit, we don't. And I'm open to options to expand if people want to expand. If some communities want to have it, I'm open to different options.
On term limits, Speaker Madigan says, I'm for term limits. The voters can handle that, so problem solved?
Yeah. So the term limits ballot initiative, we got almost 600,000 signatures 2 years ago. The powers that be from the General Assembly sued in court and won to keep that ballot initiative from going to the people. And what the court ruled 2 years ago is the same thing that the court ruled last week around fair maps. Same process, same result. That if a voter referendum process were to be pursued to impact the General Assembly, that the General Assembly, then the voter referendum process needs to be structural and procedural. You and I can guess what that means. Most lawyers don't seem to agree on what that means. But the net effect of that ruling is that a voter referendum process can't get term limits done directly through a voter referendum and can't get fair maps done through a voter referendum. Both of those need to be passed through the General Assembly and put on the ballot. So the Speaker now, if the Speaker said what you just told me he said, that will be awesome, because in the fall veto session he will do what I've requested. Come back and vote and pass a term limits constitutional amendment through the General Assembly and put it on the ballot. That would be fantastic. That's probably a fair statement.
Governor Rauner, one of the people who's been mentioned as a competitor for your job is Senator Dick Durbin. He criticized your approach. He says you're putting downstate interests versus Chicago.
Let's see. Illinois' political system is broken. Our government is not working for the people of the state. Our economy is not competitive. We continue to have lackluster growth and to lose jobs and have lower family incomes. Our government bureaucracy is way too expensive and unaffordable. Our education system is inadequate at best. Change is hard. Change is critically important. There'll be critics along the way. It's part of the process.
What kind of governor would take Urban?
You should ask the various folks who are interested.
Governor, there are public reports that your spouse is kind of.
Saw that. Yeah, I heard about that report. The one thing I'll say about that report is it is definitively baloney. I'll say that.
Does that mean you're committed to running for re-election in 2018?
I've said, you know what, I'm a believer in term limits, and I said that the most I would serve is 8 years if people wanted me to, and that's what I will stick to.
One more.
Any thoughts, observations on the DNC that's going on? Have you been watching it? Any takeaways?
I have not. I have not been paying much attention to either convention. I'm very focused on Illinois. I'm not commenting on the presidential politics. Illinois has big challenges that we've discussed. It takes my full time and attention. And as you know, I've been traveling the state the last 9 cities the last 2 days. I love it. I love the people of Illinois. It's an honor to work here. We've got big challenges. We're going to fix them. It's taking a little too long, but we'll fix them. Thanks very much, everybody.
Concern about security.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.